This is Michael Perozzo. This is my beer story. And this is 3 bottles of the Commons beers. What I hope will not be my last 3 bottles of the Commons. If you hadn't heard the news already, yesterday, New School Beer ran a story announcing that the Commons would be closing up shop. They're going to have a new tenant in their building that, if it were the only news, I'd be really excited about. I still am excited. The new tenant's going to be Modern Times. Modern Times out of San Diego is going to have a Portland brewing facility, which I think that's fantastic. And I would have loved to have heard that news if it didn't come with the news that the Commons would be closing up shop. At least that's what it said at first. The article went on to give a little. You can read it at newschoolbeer.com, but it went on to give a little hope in that the owner of the Commons, which owns the building and is going to be leasing that space to Modern Times, he left the door kind of open to there being a future for the Commons. But nonetheless, hearing that a brewery that got its start in 2010 under a different name became the Commons in 2011, and really has been in that little area of Portland where you had the Green Dragon and Cascade Barrel House. It was just it felt like it was a part of the fabric there, even though it's only been there for a really short time. I have some thoughts on this, and this a lot of my beer stories, they talk about my experiences at the breweries and things like that, but I also think a lot on the business of brewing. And in the article, it talked about the owner of the Commons was quoted as saying that it was just really a matter of debits and credits, debt versus money you have coming in. And I'd been thinking about that quite a bit lately. We went through a big brewery boom here in between 2008 and 2012. A lot of breweries popped up all around the Portland area. The last numbers I've heard for the Portland area, and this is probably 6 or 8 months ago, I heard there was in the high 60s. That's how many breweries there were in the Portland city limits that were, licensed to distribute. That's a lot. I'm not implying that that's not sustainable. I think it is, and I think a lot of those breweries are healthy. But there was a lot of growth over a very short period of time, and it continues. There's new breweries opening all over the Portland area now. But what I've been thinking about is how do those breweries come to be? There's a lot of different ways to open a business. There's just the old school bootstrap. You have no debt. You don't start with a lot of money. You're going off of your own savings. You're piecing together a dream bit by bit. That's a slow process, and not one that is really seen in the brewing world all that much. Brewing equipment costs a lot. Costs a lot of money for that equipment to start brewing beer at any kind of capacity that's going to that you're really going to get sales churning. You're going to have a lot of expenses related to ingredients, and you're going to have labor expenses to sell that beer. It's tough to bootstrap it. So then there's really, I think, in general terms here, two other ways you can open a brewery. One is you can find investors. The other is you can get a business loan. Those are very similar because you're working with people that are expecting a return. They're expecting that money back and then some for your venture. Um, so that's why I've kind of watched and thought about this a lot recently. Is there have been a lot of breweries that in that window there that I mentioned, that '08 to 2012, felt like there was just this onslaught of new breweries, and it's exciting. It still is exciting, um, but you have to kind of wonder, where are they at on paper? Where's how are they doing? Um, because here with the Commons, to hear that they're closing and that they had any sort of a financial struggle, for many, that's very surprising, because they're extremely sought after. I can't think of, I mean, let me say, every like great bottle share I've ever been a part of, there's multiple beers by the Commons there. Um, it's they're sought after. They're doing amazing things on another level, but they one of the things that I think's interesting is they're one of those breweries that's a little bit more farmhouse. Um, uh, farmhouse ales, really some European styles that you don't commonly see, despite their name, the Commons. Their beer was very uncommon. Uh, they didn't have a flagship IPA or a flagship lager that you found in six packs at Fred Meyer. That didn't happen. Um, and that's something that sometimes a brewery, despite what they really want to brew, are kind of put into a position where there's something that takes off from their brewery that they need to brew a lot of uh, to keep the doors open, to keep the lights on. So this was uh, an interesting thing, and I don't claim to know all the details. And this video I've probably said a couple things here that are really speculating, but I wonder about the future. I wonder, people talk about, is there a craft beer bubble? I'm not one that likes to believe that there is one, because I lived in the Northwest through the 90s and early 2000s, where people asked, is there going to be a coffee bubble? Can we really have a Starbucks in every town? Now we have three Starbucks in the same dang parking lot. Um, it's There was no bubble for coffee in that terms, but what there was in coffee, and I think there could be in beer, uh, there were waves. There was first wave coffee. Pete's was a part of that. If you were in the Portland area, you might have known Coffee People was kind of a part of that. And then there was a second wave that was your Starbucks, Dutch Brothers, um, those different drive-through coffee places that do a lot of frappuccinos, cappuccinos, mochas, all of that. And then we've entered here third wave coffee, which is more of the Kova coffee if you're in the Portland area. If you're in California, you might be familiar with Phil's, a very third wave. Um, I think that's a little closer to what we might see in beer. Starbucks came through and bought a lot of second wave coffee places, like Tully's, um, and coffee people, and shut them down. Uh, Turn them into Starbucks or let them go. Uh, we see big beer brands buying up breweries now, while other breweries maybe get in a little bit over their head and don't quite make it. Um, uh, there's a lot to think about, and of course, I don't wish any ill on anyone in the industry at all, but this is why I'm so passionate about supporting local and supporting craft. There's people out there who have taken big risks. They've either put their blood, sweat, tears on the line, and in many cases, and in all cases, money, either their own money or they're on the hook to someone else to fulfill the dream. Um, that's why I'm huge on supporting local, independent craft beer. Um, so, heavy subject today. Uh, yeah, a beer question to finish this all out with. Uh, oh man, I need to start thinking of these beer questions before I start the video, huh? Just trying to off the cuff with this. You know what? Let's celebrate some new breweries near you. What's a local independent craft brewer near you that's opened up recently that you're gonna head out and support this week? What's an independent craft brewer near you, newer, opened up within the last year or so, that you're gonna go show them some support? And then yeah, keep drinking craft beer, keep drinking independent craft beer, uh, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow with hopefully less heavy and even less time. This has gotten to be a little bit long, but we'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.